The morning sun barely peeks through the grimy windows of the small Atlanta apartment when Jasmine Carter's phone buzzes with another overdue notice. She stares at the screen, her heart sinking as she counts the luxury cars lined up outside her building, dozens of them, their chrome gleaming like promises she can't understand. But just 24 hours ago, this same street was empty, and Jasmine had only $10 to her name. What the hell is happening out there? Her neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez calls through the thin walls, but Jasmine can't answer because she's still trying to process how one simple act of kindness could have led to this chaos. Let me take you back to yesterday, when Jasmine Carter was just another struggling young woman in East Atlanta, counting every penny and wondering how she'd make rent by Friday. The autumn air carries the scent of fried chicken from the corner store as Jasmine walks down Ponce de Leon Avenue, her stomach growling despite her best efforts to ignore it. 10 crumpled bills sit heavy in her jacket pocket, her last $10 until her next paycheck from the diner, still 3 days away. She's already done the math 100 times, rent is due in 4 days, she's short by $200, and these $10 were supposed to buy her enough ramen to last until Wednesday. "Morning, sweetheart," comes the familiar voice that stops her in her tracks. Fred Jenkins sits against the brick wall of the old barbershop, his weathered hands wrapped around a paper cup that's seen better days. His clothes are clean but worn thin, and his eyes hold that particular kind of warmth that comes from someone who's seen the worst of life but somehow held on to hope. "Morning, Mr. Fred," Jasmine replies, slowing her pace despite knowing she should hurry to work. For the past 6 months, she's walked the same route, and Fred has been here every single day, offering the same gentle greeting to everyone who passes. "You look tired, baby girl. Long night?" Jasmine pauses, surprised by the genuine concern in his voice. Most people walk past Fred like he's invisible, but something about his presence has always felt different to her, safer, somehow. "Just thinking about bills, you know how it is," she admits, then immediately regrets sharing too much. Fred nods knowingly. "I surely do. Been there myself, more times than I care to count." He gestures to the empty space beside him. "You got a minute to sit with an old man?" Little did Jasmine know that this conversation would change everything, but something in Fred's voice compels her to check her phone. She's got 15 minutes before her shift starts. "I suppose I could sit for a few minutes," she says, settling down on the cold concrete beside him. Fred's face lights up with a smile that transforms his entire appearance. "You know, in all my years sitting on this corner, you're one of the few people who actually sees me. Most folks look right through me like I'm not even here." "That's not right," Jasmine says softly. "Everyone deserves to be seen." "You believe that, don't you?" Fred studies her face with an intensity that makes her slightly uncomfortable. "Tell me something, Jasmine, and yes, I know your name, I pay attention. When's the last time you did something kind for someone when you couldn't afford to?" The question catches her off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when's the last time you gave something to someone else when you needed it more yourself?" Jasmine thinks about the $10 in her pocket, about her empty refrigerator, about the rent notice sitting on her kitchen table. I can't really afford to do that right now, Mr. Fred. I'm barely making it myself." Fred's expression grows thoughtful. "Can I tell you something about my life, sweetheart? Something I haven't told another soul?" There's something in his tone that makes Jasmine nod, despite the voice in her head telling her she needs to get to work. 30 years ago, I wasn't sitting on this corner," Fred begins, his voice taking on a distant quality. "I had everything a man could want, big house in Buckhead, cars that cost more than most people's houses, respect in this city that money could buy." Jasmine's eyebrows raise in surprise. She's never imagined Fred as anything other than the homeless man on the corner. "What happened?" she asks quietly. "Life happened. Bad investments, worse friends, and worst of all, I forgot what really mattered." Fred's hands tighten around his cup. "I had all that wealth, but I never helped anybody. Never gave $1 to someone who needed it more than me. Never saw past my own needs." But what happened next shocked everyone who knew the old Fred Jenkins. "One day, I lost everything, and I mean everything. House, cars, bank accounts, even the people I thought were friends. Found myself on the street with nothing but the clothes on my back and a lesson I learned too late. Jasmine feels her heart constrict. That's terrible, Mr. Fred. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry for me, baby. Be smart for yourself. Fred turns to look directly at her, his eyes holding an intensity she's never seen before. See, when you have nothing left to give, you learn what giving really means. It's not about having extra, it's about giving when you can't afford to, because that's when it matters most. Fred reaches into his jacket and pulls out a worn photograph, a picture of a younger version of himself standing in front of a massive mansion, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Jasmine makes in a month. This was me, he says simply. Rich as King Midas and twice as foolish. You know what I wouldn't give for one chance to go back and use that money the right way? To help people like you, people who work hard and deserve better. Jasmine stares at the photograph, trying to reconcile the wealthy man in the picture with the homeless man sitting beside her. Something deep in her chest starts to shift. Mr. Fred, she says slowly, when's the last time you had a real meal? Fred's smile is sad but genuine. Yesterday, I think. Mrs. Kim from the flower shop brought me some leftover rice. Jasmine's hand moves to her pocket, feeling the $10 that represents her food for the next 3 days. She thinks about Fred's story, about giving when you can't afford to, about seeing people who need to be seen. This decision would change everything, though neither of them could possibly know it yet. Come on, Jasmine says, standing up and extending her hand to Fred. Let me buy you lunch. Fred looks up at her with something approaching shock. Sweetheart, you don't need to do that. I can tell you're struggling too. Maybe that's exactly why I need to do it, Jasmine replies, surprised by her own words. Besides, there's a soul food place around the corner, and everyone deserves a good meal. As Fred takes her hand and pulls himself to his feet, Jasmine feels something shift in the universe around them, a sense that this moment is bigger than either of them understands. But the real shock was still coming, and it would arrive the very next morning in the form of luxury cars and questions that would turn her entire world upside down. The morning sun cuts through Jasmine's thin curtains, but it's not the light that wakes her. It's the noise, the constant hum of engines and voices that shouldn't be there at 7 in the morning on her quiet Atlanta street. She rolls over, pressing her pillow against her ears, but the sound only grows louder. What in the world, she mutters, stumbling to her window. When she pulls back the curtain, her breath catches in her throat. Luxury cars line her street like something out of a movie. Black sedans, gleaming SUVs, vehicles that cost more than she'll make in 5 years. They're parked bumper to bumper, and more keep arriving. Men in expensive suits step out, checking their phones, adjusting their ties. Some carry clipboards, others have cameras. Jasmine's neighbor, Mrs. Washington, stands on her front porch in her robe, hands on her hips. I've lived on this street for 37 years, she's saying to another neighbor, and I ain't never seen nothing like this. The weight of reality crashes down on Jasmine as she watches the chaos unfold. Yesterday feels like a dream now, that simple moment of sharing lunch with Fred. But looking at her empty wallet on the nightstand, the stack of unpaid bills on her kitchen counter, brings her back to earth fast. She has 4 days to make rent, and after spending her last $10 on Fred's meal, she's not sure how it's going to happen. Her phone buzzes with a text from her landlord, rent reminder. Due Friday. No extensions this month. Jasmine sinks onto her bed, running her hands through her hair. She'd felt so good about helping Fred yesterday, but now the practical voice in her head won't stop nagging. That $10 could have bought her enough ramen to last 3 days. Could have covered her bus fare to job interviews this week. A knock at her door interrupts her spiral of worry. She peers through the peephole and sees a man she doesn't recognize, though something about him seems familiar. He's older, maybe in his 60s, with kind eyes and an expensive-looking coat. Can I help you? She asks through the door. Miss Carter? Jasmine Carter? His voice is warm, professional. My name is Marcus Webb. I was hoping to speak with you about yesterday afternoon. Jasmine's stomach drops. How does this stranger know her name? How does he know about yesterday? She opens the door a crack, keeping the chain latched. I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong person. Marcus smiles gently. You shared your lunch with an elderly gentleman named Fred Jenkins yesterday around noon. You bought him a sandwich and sat with him near the bus stop on Peachtree. The words hit her like ice water. Nobody else was there. Nobody else could know those details unless. Who are you? She whispers. Someone who's been looking for Fred for a very long time, Marcus says. And someone who's very interested in meeting the young woman who showed him such kindness. Through her window, Jasmine can see more cars arriving, more people gathering. The street is transforming before her eyes, and somehow, impossibly, it's all connected to her simple act of sharing a meal. Her hands shake as she grips the door frame. Miss Carter, Marcus continues, his voice growing more urgent, I need you to understand that what you did yesterday, the kindness you showed Fred, it set something in motion that's much bigger than you realize. Those cars outside, those people gathering, they're all here because of you. Because of what you did for my old friend. Jasmine's mind races. Friend? Old friend? But Fred seemed so alone, so forgotten. How could this well-dressed man with his expensive coat and careful words know the homeless man she'd shared lunch with? I don't understand, she manages. Marcus looks over his shoulder at the growing crowd on the street, then back at her with an expression that's both gentle and urgent. Fred Jenkins wasn't always homeless, Miss Carter. In fact, until 3 years ago, he was one of the wealthiest philanthropists in the Southeast. What you did yesterday, it reminded him of something very important he'd forgotten about himself. The world seems to tilt around Jasmine. Wealthy? Philanthropist? The gentle old man who thanked her for a simple sandwich? But before she can process this revelation, before she can ask the 1,000 questions flooding her mind, Marcus's expression changes. He glances at his watch, and urgency crosses his features. Miss Carter, I need to ask you something very important, and I need you to answer me honestly. His voice drops to almost a whisper. After Fred ate the lunch you bought him, did he say anything unusual to you? Anything that seemed significant? Jasmine thinks back to Fred's words, his gentle smile, the way his hand felt when he placed it on hers. The blessing he spoke that made her heart feel strange and full. As she opens her mouth to respond, a black limousine pulls up directly in front of her building, and everything changes. The luxury cars keep multiplying like some kind of fever dream. Jasmine peers through her blinds again, counting at least 15 vehicles now, Mercedes, BMWs, even what looks like a Tesla or two. Her neighbors have started gathering on the sidewalk, phones out, recording everything. Girl, you better get down there and see what's happening, Mia says, practically bouncing on Jasmine's couch. This could be your moment. Jasmine shakes her head, anxiety churning in her stomach. My moment for what? I don't even know what this is about. That's when Mrs. Rodriguez from downstairs comes knocking, breathless with excitement. Jasmine, honey, there's news crews setting up. They're saying there's some kind of philanthropic event happening right here on our street. Something about recognizing everyday heroes. The words hit Jasmine like a punch to the chest. Yesterday's lunch with Fred flashes through her mind, his weathered hands, his grateful smile, the way he blessed her as the sun went down. Could this somehow be connected to that simple act of kindness? See? Mia grabs her arm. This is exactly what I was talking about. Maybe someone saw what you did yesterday and wants to celebrate it. You could finally catch a break, Jazz. But something feels wrong about the whole thing. Jasmine watches through the window as photographers position themselves, as assistants in crisp suits direct traffic, as everything becomes a carefully orchestrated spectacle. This isn't how genuine kindness works. It doesn't need cameras and luxury cars and news crews. What if they're just using me? Jasmine whispers, more to herself than to Mia. What if they want to turn yesterday into some feel-good story for their own purposes? The thought makes her sick. Fred's gratitude had been real, pure. The connection they'd shared over that simple meal had meant something. Now it feels like it's being packaged and commodified, turned into content for someone else's agenda. Jazz, listen to me, Mia says, her voice firm. Even if that's what this is, you can still use it. You need money for rent, remember? Sometimes you have to play the game to survive. Jasmine knows Mia's right on some level, but the idea of performing her kindness for strangers makes her skin crawl. She didn't help Fred for recognition or reward, she did it because it was right, because he needed it, because something deep inside her recognized his humanity and responded to it. The crowd outside grows larger. She can hear voices now, people asking questions, wondering who they're waiting for. Someone mentions her name, and her heart starts racing. I can't do this, she says, backing away from the window. I can't turn yesterday into some publicity stunt. It wasn't about that. Then what was it about? Mia challenges. Because honey, I love you, but rent is due in 4 days and your bank account has exactly $12 in it. The harsh reality cuts deep because Mia's absolutely right. Jasmine stares at the chaos outside, all these resources, all this attention, all this potential, and feels torn between her integrity and her desperate circumstances. Just as she's about to turn away completely, to hide in her bedroom until all of this passes, her phone rings. The number isn't familiar, but something compels her to answer. Hello, Jasmine. The voice is gentle, professional. My name is David Matthews. I'm calling about Fred Jenkins. Jasmine's blood runs cold. Is he okay? Did something happen to him? He's fine, but I need to meet with you immediately. There's something about yesterday that you need to understand. Something that changes everything. The lawyer's words hit Jasmine like a thunderbolt. Miss Carter, I represent the estate of Frederick Harrison Jenkins III. The gentleman you helped yesterday was once one of Atlanta's most prominent philanthropists. Jasmine's hands trembled as she stared at the official documents spread across her small kitchen table. The man sitting across from her, Mr. Whitman, adjusted his glasses and continued speaking, but his words seemed to echo from underwater. Mr. Jenkins lost everything in 2018 when his business partner embezzled millions, Mr. Whitman explained, his voice gentle but professional. His family foundation collapsed, his home was foreclosed, and he ended up on the streets. But he never stopped believing in the power of human kindness. This can't be real, Jasmine whispered, her voice barely audible. Through her window, she could see even more luxury vehicles arriving, their occupants stepping out in expensive suits and designer dresses. Mr. Whitman placed a sealed envelope in front of her. He wrote this the night you helped him. He'd been carrying it for weeks, waiting to find someone worthy of his trust. With shaking fingers, Jasmine opened the envelope. Fred's handwriting was wobbly but clear. Dear Jasmine, your $10 bought more than lunch today. It bought back my faith in humanity. I have nothing left to give except the memory of who I used to be and the hope of what you can become. Use what I'm leaving you now for yourself, but for others who need what we both needed yesterday, someone to see them as human. What exactly is he leaving me? Jasmine asked, though part of her already feared the answer. The Jenkins Foundation has been reactivated with a trust fund of $12 million, Mr. Whitman said. He's named you as the sole beneficiary and director. Everything outside is connected to this, board members, donors, community leaders who knew Fred before his fall. They've all come to meet the woman he chose. Jasmine stood abruptly, pacing to the window. The crowd had grown larger, with news vans now joining the luxury cars. I can't do this, she said, panic rising in her voice. I'm nobody. I work part-time at a grocery store. I can barely make rent. That's exactly why he chose you, Mr. Whitman replied softly. He said in his final instructions that only someone who understood real struggle could properly steward his legacy. A knock at the door interrupted them. Mia burst in without waiting for an answer, her eyes wide with excitement and concern. Girl, there's reporters out there asking neighbors about you. What is going on? Before Jasmine could answer, another voice called from outside. Ms. Carter? Could we speak with you? This is Channel 5 News. The weight of it all crashed down on Jasmine's shoulders. $12 million. A foundation. Hundreds of people waiting outside her apartment. And at the center of it all, Fred's quiet voice from yesterday. Sometimes the universe has a way of rewarding true kindness. I need air, Jasmine said, heading toward the door. Wait, Mr. Whitman called. There's something else. The board expects to meet with you in 1 hour to discuss immediate distribution of emergency funds to local homeless shelters. They're waiting for your direction. Jasmine's hand froze on the doorknob. An hour. In 1 hour, she'd have to stand before successful businesspeople and community leaders, people who'd managed millions while she'd struggled to manage her own life. As she stepped outside, cameras immediately turned toward her. The crowd parted respectfully, but she could feel their intense scrutiny. Some faces showed curiosity, others skepticism, and a few displayed genuine warmth. Then she saw him, a tall man in a dark coat standing at the edge of the crowd, his face partially hidden by shadows. Unlike everyone else who seemed focused on her, he appeared to be scanning the scene with calculating eyes. When their gazes met for a brief moment, something cold passed through her. But it was Mia's whispered words that truly terrified her. Jasmine, that man's been asking very specific questions about Fred. Questions that make it sound like he knew him personally. The mysterious figure steps closer through the crowd, and Jasmine's heart pounds against her ribs. The man's weathered face comes into view under the Atlanta streetlights, and suddenly recognition floods through her. It's the same kind eyes, the same gentle smile she remembers from the stories Fred used to tell. You must be Jasmine, he says, his voice carrying the same warmth Fred's always had. I'm Marcus Williams. Fred Jenkins was my business partner, and my dearest friend for over 40 years. The crowd falls silent as Marcus reaches into his jacket, pulling out a worn leather portfolio. His hands shake slightly as he opens it, revealing photographs of him and Fred from decades past, two young men in sharp suits standing in front of what looks like their first office building. Before life threw us different curveballs, Fred and I built something beautiful together, Marcus continues, his voice growing stronger. When he lost everything in that fire, when his family turned their backs on him, I searched for him everywhere. I never stopped looking. Tears stream down Jasmine's cheeks as Marcus hands her the portfolio. Inside are legal documents, property deeds, and a handwritten letter with Fred's unmistakable scrawl. He found me 3 weeks ago, Marcus says, his own eyes glistening. Told me about a young woman who showed him kindness when the world had forgotten him. Said she reminded him why we started our foundation in the first place, to help people who help others. Jasmine's hands tremble as she reads Fred's final letter aloud to the gathering crowd. Jasmine, you gave me lunch when you had nothing. But more than that, you gave me dignity. You saw me as human when everyone else saw a problem to avoid. The buildings, the money, the cars, they're just tools. The real treasure is your heart. Use what I'm giving you to multiply kindness, just like you did for me. The revelation hits the neighborhood like a wave. Mrs. Rodriguez clasps her hands to her chest. Children who had been playing in the street now stand quietly, sensing the gravity of the moment. Even the skeptical neighbors who had questioned the morning's events begin to understand. The Jenkins-Williams Foundation was worth $12 million when we dissolved it, Marcus explains. Fred never touched his half. He's been living on the streets for 15 years, but he never forgot our mission. He was waiting for the right person to carry it forward. Jasmine looks out at the luxury cars, the crowd, the cameras that have somehow appeared. But now she sees them differently. They're not symbols of wealth or status, they're tools for transformation. I don't know anything about running a foundation, she admits, her voice carrying across the silent street. Neither did we when we started, Marcus smiles. But Fred saw something in you. He told me you have the one thing money can't buy, genuine compassion. The rest we can teach you. Over the following months, Jasmine's transformation becomes the talk of Atlanta. The Jenkins-Williams Foundation reopens with her as its director, focusing on programs that provide dignity alongside assistance. They create mobile kitchens that don't just feed the homeless but offer job training and mental health support. They establish mentorship programs connecting at-risk youth with successful community members. The apartment building where Jasmine once worried about making rent becomes the foundation's first affordable housing project. Mrs. Rodriguez gets hired as the building manager. Mia becomes the foundation's community outreach coordinator. But the most profound change is in Jasmine herself. The anxious young woman who counted every dollar has become a confident leader who counts every life touched. She speaks at conferences, appears on talk shows, and becomes a voice for compassionate action across the country. On the first anniversary of that life-changing day, Jasmine stands in the same spot where she met Fred, now transformed into a small memorial garden. A bronze plaque reads, "Frederick Jenkins, he taught us that kindness is never wasted." "Thank you, Fred," she whispers to the evening air, "for seeing something in me I didn't even know was there." As luxury cars once again line the street, this time for the Foundation's annual gala, Jasmine smiles. She understands now that Fred's greatest gift wasn't the money. It was the lesson that one act of kindness, no matter how small, can change everything. The ripple effect of that $10 lunch continues to spread, touching thousands of lives and proving that sometimes the universe has a plan far greater than we can imagine. All it takes is one person willing to see the humanity in another, to choose compassion over convenience, and to believe that love always finds a way to multiply. Have you ever had a moment when a simple act of kindness changed everything? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true stories that prove the power of human compassion.